Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us for our latest edition of Lesson Labs. I am joined here by my colleague here at Newsela, Holly. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Tyson.
Hi. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself really quickly and let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a content producer here at Newsela, and formerly I was a multi-subject classroom teacher and really enjoyed using Newsela as a teacher. So I'm excited to be on board now and sharing all about Newsela with you all.
I'm so jealous that you got to use Newsela in your classroom. I left the classroom before Newsela even existed, so I wish I could have used it. So I'm really excited to hear your point of view today. And we're here to talk about specifically like life science strands, and you mostly like upper elementary or lower middle school classrooms, and particularly the ones that are focused on habitats, biomes, ecosystems. There's so many different science standards that fit around this topic. So I'm really excited to dive in today.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So the first thing I wanted to do is just kind of unpack a little bit, like what do we mean when we talk about habitats and biomes? Can you tell us some of maybe the common standards that you see, or like some of the NGSS standards that are kind of packed in within habitats and biomes?
Well, I was working primarily in an elementary school classroom, so a lot of it had to do with identifying, some of the different elements, the different roles, and really kind of focusing in on, the definitions of things and starting to think about the interactions between some of these elements too.
Yeah, I know when I think about the standards, like I think about things like animal populations. When you get up into higher grades, you're starting to think about how animal populations influence one another. You start to learn about like conservation of energy through the food chain. So you start to kind of stack in as the grades go on, your understanding of how these populations of animals and plants and sunlight like all interact.
I find this is an area where students are really engaged as well.
Yeah.
Love learning about nature, love learning about animals and their interactions. And it's a great chance a lot of times to connect with, the outdoors around you.
Yeah, I wish all science standards were easy to like get students as jazzed about as like learning about animals eating other animals. All right, well, let's dig in. The first, we love to start these lesson labs by thinking about what already exists for teachers that are already using a kind of a core textbook material in classrooms, where Newsela can just like pop right on top of whatever it is you're learning. So talk to us a little bit about the curriculum complements that we might see when a teacher that has access to Newsela Science goes to our science subject area.
So the curriculum complements are just that. They're meant to complement, other curricula. Yeah. And it's a great way to make sure that you're getting engaging articles that can go along with the work that you're already doing in your classroom. So you'll see here, things aligned with Amplify or Elevate for teachers who have the Newsela Science.
Yeah, so if you click see more, you're going to see all of the different curriculum complements that we have for Newsela Science. I know that, let's say for Amplify, I think it's in grade 5. Yep, that has a whole unit all about ecosystem restoration. So if you're following the Amplify grade 5 text, you're going to find this ecosystem restoration. And we've designed this whole curriculum complement to like follow along with those lessons really, really seamlessly and help students make those connections. When a teacher clicks into this curriculum complement, what are some things that make this Newsela kind of curation so valuable for teachers?
That resource bar that you see over there on the right-hand side is so crucial. And sometimes it doesn't pop up right away. I'm not sure if we're able to show what it looks like if it's crossed out, if you hit that X there.
Oh, yeah.
So sometimes you need to really keep an eye out for that resource button there and click it, because that holds a wealth of information in there.
That is so helpful. So I click on unit information and I see a full page view. What are teachers going to be able to see?
So here,
Oh, I think I just clicked in a circle. Hold on, let me go. let me start with the first, which is that ecosystems and food webs, which is the first section of this unit.
This might be one of the ones where we just have articles that are meant to go along with the curriculum. Some curriculum complements, I think, have more instructionalized information, lesson guides and whatnot. And sometimes it's just we've already gone ahead and pulled articles that we think would go really well with this unit.
Gotcha. So this is really just like we've done kind of the pre-work to say, if you're teaching ecosystems and food webs and you click see more, here are a whole bunch of articles that you can use with students to connect that learning.
Yep, the curation's done for you, and we know that these are articles that students are really going to enjoy and are going to be supporting the lesson objectives of this lesson.
Very cool. I'm going to pop over to, I think it's Elevate Science. So if you're using the Savas Elevate Science curriculum in grade 7, there's also an ecosystems unit. So we have grade 5 in this one, grade 7 in this one. let's see if we have some, there we go. Here we have some lesson sparks in the resources that are a little bit more fleshed out. So talk to us a little bit about what teachers are going to see in this lesson spark section.
So the use guidelines are just that. They're going to tell you a little bit about how to implement this in your classroom. Here, you'll see really quickly if you bolt through, we're going to talk about things like student choice and current event connections, ways that you might think about using this in your classroom.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a little bit more laid out. The recommended instructional pathway will kind of give you like a table of contents of what's going on here. And then
this is one of the most helpful is the NGSS alignments.
Yes.
Absolutely, you can feel 100% confident that whatever you're going to see here is totally aligned to specifically the 7th grade, specifically the middle school NGSS standards that correspond to this SAVIS, what is it called? SAVIS Elevate Science curriculum.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. If teachers are using the curriculum complements, I always recommend that they start here. If some teachers don't have Newsela Science, but they're still teaching science classrooms or students, and they want to try to find some articles on their own, what recommendations might you have to help them get to some of these articles without going through this curriculum complement section?
Well, we've done a lot of work and made the search feature really helpful. So keywords can be a great way, or thinking about the topic, or even, key vocabulary that you're going to be teaching, pop right into the search there.
Very cool. So when I think about like tier 3 science vocabulary, it's like those words at the beginning of every unit that are like the vocab words that students definitely need to focus on. So if I think of like, what are maybe some tier 3 vocabulary words for like a habitats or biomes lesson that teachers might want to search for?
I mean, habitat itself is a great place to start. Perfect. Maybe like food chain, we'd mentioned that's a fun part.
Yeah, and a reminder too that like whatever Newsela license your school has, whether it's a totally free license or a license to one of the Newsela subject products, you're going to see content here that you can access. So you're never going to see things that you can't click on. What I see might be a little bit different than what a teacher sees when they search for habitat, and that's okay. But all of the stuff you're going to see in this search are things that you're going to be able to use in your classroom. And I see so many great habitat articles here. I also see some standards. So if you wanted to look into a standard and see the other articles that are attached to that standard or aligned to that standard, those are going to pop up as well.
Yeah, it's really helpful that there's such a breadth here, because that can really allow for student choice, which is only going to further enhance engagement.
Absolutely. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to see a couple of these over the next 10 or 12 minutes. So I will be keeping an eye out for some of these collections and some of these resources as well. I'm going to try one thing. We looked at habitat. I'm going to try searching for biomes and see what comes up. One thing to point out too is that there are some instances where you're going to see an infographic or an article, like a single resource or a single text. You're also going to be able to see, if you have access, some of the units or some of the text sets that include these resources. So here's a whole text set on biomes, and I see there's 50 assets inside of this text set. So I'm really excited to see what we see.
That's huge.
I know. So here are just row after row after row of articles and texts that students can explore. And I see deserts, I see marine habitats, I see polar habitats, I see so many different types of habitats. So if you have, if you click on this biomes, it's going to aggregate all of these articles by type, and students can go really deep on all sorts of different types of habitats. It's not just going to focus on one.
Absolutely. And it can be great too. You can jigsaw, have students in groups, each picking a different type of biome and then teaching each other about it. Can be really fun as well in the classroom.
Oh, I love it. So if teachers wanted to find their way here, I just wanted to show, if you click on browse, every single teacher, regardless of what license you have, is going to have a science section. Just what shows up here is going to be a little bit different. And if your school has access to Newsela Science, you're going to see this articles by topic section. And here is another place where you can go to see all sorts of biology or life science article topics. And biomes is a whole category here, as well as ecosystems. So there's a couple ways that we can find texts that really support whatever lesson it is that you're teaching right now.
Absolutely. It's
Very
a lot
cool.
of good content in there.
We saw a moment ago an infographic, and I'm going to guess that some of the teachers that are seeing our lesson lab right now didn't really know that Newsela has content that goes beyond news articles or like current events articles. I would love to show off some of like the diagrams and infographics that Newsela has. Can you tell me how I can find that type of content within Newsela Science?
Absolutely. So if we could go back to that home page for
Yeah.
the science, I
Yep.
guess, the
Yep.
science page, there's a section down towards the bottom there. It's called diagrams on that left
Ah,
panel.
perfect.
So you could do that. You could also search specifically if you knew, in the
Mm,
search. But here in diagrams, you could click maybe and see more, or if
yeah.
in the life sciences.
Yeah, the great tip is you can click on this diagrams header right here to go into this entire collection, or you can click see more. It's going to take you to the exact same view. I'll click on see more. And I'm guessing we're going to go into life science diagrams.
Yeah,
For this one.
that's the place.
Cool. So what can teachers expect when they see a diagram or an infographic on Newsela?
So when we click into one of these, we're going to see an image that's going to be really helpful. A lot of times there's labels or provide some information within the image itself, such as we
Mm,
see there with that cell one.
yeah,
And then there's usually accompanying it some sort of overview, maybe like a paragraph to help explain what we're looking at.
definitely. So here I'm seeing abiotic and biotic components of an ecosystem. That sounds like an upper elementary, maybe even middle school way to think about
Yes.
habitats. So here's a really great way for students to see like the components that are biotic and the components that are abiotic, but that all obviously work together within a particular ecosystem. And I see, yeah, like you mentioned, there's a little bit of text below just to support. And I'm curious what's going to happen. Oh, I see that these are only available at one text level.
Correct. And then there might be some activities there if you hit that
Oh,
activities tab.
yeah. Let's see what we got.
So in this case, there's a write prompt that could go along with it
Yeah.
for students to work on after viewing this. And I also really enjoy the diagrams. It's a way to just present information in another way. So it's a really
Yeah.
great differentiation tool. And I also think it can be a great way. I enjoy using these sometimes as kind of the intro or the launch of a lesson to ask students,
Mm.
oh, just look at it. What do you notice? What do you observe? It's a great kind of inquiry model for getting started.
I love that you just mentioned that we can use this at like the front end of a unit to get students curious, maybe making some predictions, maybe filling out a KWL chart. And then at the end, to be really curious to come back to this and see like, what have you learned since the first time we saw this? Like, how has all the learning really synthesized here? These are images, so students can't necessarily like annotate right on the text, but there's so much that students can do, filling out graphic organizers, writing down, maybe doing a mind map on the wall together. So many ways that a teacher could use this with students.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going towards like a T chart or a Venn diagram, so
Yeah,
many different
totally.
things. And there's also, image analysis kind of graphic
Yeah.
organizers as well.
If I click back into, I just want to see if we have um, any other infographics that might be really helpful when we're talking about habitats and biomes. And obviously life cycle is like a pretty huge pretty huge
Yeah,
category, but I am seeing a couple of food webs here. So like if you were
totally.
specifically studying a desert habitat, or even more specifically Sonoran Desert, this would be a really great way for students to be talking about producers and consumers, maybe some decomposers, and how that differs from like a rainforest habitat or like a polar tundra habitat.
Exactly. Yeah. A great place for them to identify some of these different roles and then
Mhm.
to do, as you mentioned, the compare and contrast with other areas. I believe we even have one that is food webs of land and sea. So that could yield a really interesting
Oh,
conversation.
I'm going to search that really quickly. Ah, I love our search functionality.
Yes, so good.
Oh wow! So this actually has a couple of different diagrams in the same text. That's so cool.
Yeah, so
Uh,
it sets the students up to be able to kind of draw some comparisons and
yeah, definitely. Alrighty. The last thing I wanted to talk about is maybe a little bit more self-guided instruction. So of course, teachers can use Newsela to create lessons, to deliver instructions in a really curated way. They can also use Newsela to like set students free to go explore on their own, almost like when you're going to the school library and students like go find their resources. So if you were, let's maybe thinking about some older students, I'm not sure how many research projects you did in first grade. We didn't have a whole lot in second grade. But if you were working with some upper elementary students and you were maybe doing some projects about like habitat destruction or something, how could you use Newsela so that students can make some connections to the real world?
I think, setting up a text set or looking at the articles by topic is a great way to start. So just making
Yeah.
sure that you have lots of articles that are going to support that topic. And then from there, there's so much you can do. I mean, there's ways to connect, as I kind of mentioned before, if there's something that relates directly to your habitat in your home state, or if you're studying, there's a cross-curricular connection, perhaps if you're studying another country, look at the biomes or habitats there. And I think that there's some things we can do, such as, a restoration project. If we're learning about like a habitat destruction project, there's a lot of taking informed actions we could do to have students learn about something and then be a part of the solution in the world.
Totally. A great place to start would be, again, going into this browse and science section. Everyone is going to see this science news. So maybe take a quick peek at what news we published pretty recently. Amazon rainforest, that makes a lot of sense. Fossils, we can talk about what that habitat might have looked like 65 million years ago. This is a great place to see kind of what's most recently published. We can also, of course, if you're coming across an article that really catches your eye, but you're not really sure you can use right away, don't forget to save it. Every article has a save button, so you can always come back later. But this would be great to teach students how to search on Newsela. Like you said, search for destruction or restoration or habitat or by a certain country, and let students really guide their own Newsela journey.
Yeah, the search feature is great. The news is great because, as you mentioned, you're going to get the most current events, and that's always really meaningful for students when they can hear about what's happening right now.
Yeah, and it helps make those connections between I've never visited Antarctica. I don't know what that's like, but I might be able to find real people that are going there and helping to save habitats, and that can really help students, not only help understand that what we're learning really matters, but also to think about those STEM careers, right? Think about those people that are working in this field, that are doing this work. And of course, if students are getting really excited about animals, it's really easy for them to think about, the people that have those jobs. I think everybody wanted to be like a marine biologist at some point in their life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can be a huge source of inspiration.
Definitely. All right, Holly, that's really all I wanted to talk about today. We got through so many awesome ideas for teachers to incorporate Newsela content into their lessons, regardless of if you're just starting out with younger students with habitats and biomes style standards lessons, or you're all the way up into middle school and going really deep on conservation of energy. We had a ton of ideas today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. A quick reminder, too, if you want to get links to some of the resources that we walked through today, just go ahead and click on the video description down below. It's going to take you to a post in the Newsela community where we've aggregated all these resources for you. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So in that community post, there's going to be a link to a survey form. Go ahead and fill that out for us and let us know what you thought. And we're going to pick a couple of winners in the next day or two to thank them for giving their feedback. Looking forward to seeing you on the next Lesson Lab. And Holly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye.